some thoughts from Albertans on the efficiency of Alberta's justice system. Leslie, one of the questions really at the heart of this discussion today is this case an exception to the rule, or do you find that this is happening more often than it should?
Well, before this happened to Dugald, I didn't really pay attention to the justice system. I used to, Dugald and I would discuss things, and in fact, I had heard about Teskey, I think, when he did that thing to that baby. And I said to Dugald, why did he get off with that? I think he only served about 9 months, something like that. I says, that's not fair. And Dugald says, whoever said life was fair? He says, there's a big infrastructure round about criminals in the justice system. And he says, in the old days, the rat catcher didn't catch all the rats. He left a few to breed. Otherwise, he was out of a job. And I think criminal lawyers perpetuate the system too. They're not entirely innocent in this case too.
Right.
Lawyers look for loopholes, and I don't think that's right.
Rod, I have to give you the chance to weigh in on that one.
Well, I suppose lawyers do look for loopholes, but it goes back to the due process. And as I said earlier, my satisfaction in the criminal justice system isn't necessarily whether my client was acquitted or convicted, but if at the end of the trial he or she received a fair trial, that's the most important thing to me. I'm troubled when I feel that my client's innocent and they've been convicted. And it happens to every criminal defense lawyer. Everyone will have a story that they will say, I believe my client was innocent and they were convicted. Now, they're not always on that big Donald Marshall scale, but anyone who's in trouble and they're innocent, it's really a major thing for them. So there are loopholes, but I strongly believe that we have one of the best justice systems in the world. I think it's better than the US. I think it's better than some of the justice systems in Europe. And there have been a lot of changes to the criminal code in terms of the sentencing provisions that have been updated. Now, you can ask prosecutors, and not all of the prosecutors agree with the mandatory minimum sentences. They catch everybody, and people who deserve exceptions to the mandatory minimum sentences don't get them. So I understand that our justice system is not perfect. We always strive for perfection, but
you don't always achieve it.
We don't always achieve it, and we fall short. But for the most part, defense lawyers and prosecutors and judges always strive for that.
Now, go ahead.
I have to say something here. Judges are not in the real world. They're a protected minority. They don't see what goes on in the streets every day. And they don't use their powers as they should. I mean, they have the power to sentence people to dangerous offenders or whatever when they get repeat people like Teskey in front of them, but they don't do it. When Teskey shot Mike LaCusta, the judge accepted the defence that he was on LSD at the time and didn't know what he was doing. Now, you could say the same thing about a drunk driver. The drunk driver kills somebody and says, oh, I didn't know what I was doing, I was drunk at the time. When he shot the policeman, he hid that gun in his rectum. He took that gun out and he pointed it at Mike LaCusta's head and fired the gun. And that wasn't attempted murder. So the judge took the defence, LSD. When Judge Nash had the first dangerous offender hearing, she said there wasn't enough violent things in place. There wasn't a set pattern of violence in place to make him a dangerous offender. He used pliers on that 2-year-old baby to tear that penis. Nobody gets to hear that. And I think the public should get to know more about what these criminals are doing.
Andrew, we're talking about making information public. You're a reporter. Well, are we getting enough information out to Albertans to determine whether the system works?
No, absolutely not.
Definitely.
There are too many cases where there's publication bans, for example, in bail hearings. again, it's a difficult balance because you want to make sure that the accused gets a fair trial. But what often happens is that the governments who are ultimately answerable for court decisions hide behind privacy legislation and protection of privacy far too often, so we don't hear the background to what happens. The Picton case is a good example of this.
Great example, yeah. Now, are they getting a fairer shake than the victims, as somebody who covers it very often?
Oh, absolutely. The forgotten part of every criminal case, or the most neglected part of any criminal case, are the victims. I've talked to, I've known Leslie for 5 years. I've talked to other families of people. I know some of the family members of Picton's victims. And they all get left out of the picture because they're looking at punishing the criminal, but they forget that it's not just for example, in a murder case or in a serious case of serious violence, it's not just the victim of the violence who is the victim, it's the entire families.
Right.
I'll give you an example of how it's always the criminal's rights that are observed. I was taking Dugald into court when Judge Kirby was on the case, and we were held up in traffic. So we phoned ahead to the prosecutor, could he ask the judge for a recess till I got him there, because we make quite a noise, you know, getting Dugald into the court. And do you know what the judge said to the prosecutor? We are not here for Mr. Miller, we are here for Mr. Teskey.
What changes would you like to see to make the system better for victims and for all Albertans?
I'd like to see harsher sentences. And this 3 strikes thing, and you're out. We don't have a deterrent here. The criminals can keep repeating. There's no thing there that they're scared of.
Right.
They're not scared of a judge saying, I'm going to put you on 6 months probation.
Right.
Or fine you so much.
Okay. Rod?
They don't give a damn.
As an insider, somebody who's in the system every day, what other changes need to be made to improve the system?
Well, there are some changes that are being made, particularly in Edmonton, and I actually, even as a defense lawyer, sit on a victims a society that's set up to counsel victims in criminal cases, school bullying, and I'm on that board with a prosecutor, an ex-policeman. I'm on the board. Bruce Stanley's on the board, and his father was the bus driver who had the rock thrown through on the white mud. He's on the board. He went through the process, and we're setting that up with the Edmonton Police Service so people who are victims of crime will have an opportunity to face an accused person and in a controlled environment. And so we're getting government funding for those kinds of programs to assist victims. So in serious crime, you can never replace what's happened to a family or the community. And we can never replace that vacuum. So we're trying with other programs to do what we can, but you know, there are just some things we can't solve.
Right. Andrew, final word as an observer on this one?
As an observer, I would say that what needs to be done is they need to look at violent repeat offenders. They need to be put away longer, sooner. Obviously, there are many petty, non-violent criminals who can be dealt with in other ways. First-time offenders, a lot of people will go through get criminally charged once, and they will reform themselves. But it's the ones like Teskey who commit heinous crimes, mind-bogglingly violent crimes, who seem to still keep coming out with no remorse. They have to be put away faster.
Okay, thank you.
Here, I agree.
Right.
100%.
Thank you very much for your time today. Obviously, so much more we could say about this one.
I could talk for a year. This program isn't long enough for me.
We'll have to bring you back. Now, that's advocate for victims of crime, Leslie Miller, criminal defense lawyer Rod Gregory, and Edmonton Sun columnist Andrew Hannon.